apologies on the delay. This morning's webinar is on what you need to know about WebMI 2.0. It's a relatively short informational webinar this morning, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in and we'll get to them at the end.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar. In this webinar, we will look at what you need to know about the WebMI 2.0 transition. The original WebMI is undergoing a transition from its current version, which we call WebMI 1.0, to the new version, which we call WebMI 2.0. As with any transition, there are benefits, advantages, and some pitfalls. And today, we are going to be going over everything you need to know to prepare for the transition. Let's begin. Here is the agenda for today. First, we will start with a quick review of WebMI 2.0. Then, we will discuss the upcoming transition to WebMI 2.0, followed by a look at how WebMI 2.0 interacts with OCS 360. Finally, we will go through some frequently asked questions about the transition and provide some answers. If you have any further questions that aren't answered, don't worry, as there will be a Q&A session at the end. What is WebMI? WebMI is the capability for Horner controllers to serve up web pages over Ethernet from local memory. These web pages are typically used for remote monitoring or, in some cases, remote control. These web pages are created within Cscape and are often duplicates of existing OCS screens. They are built using HTML5, making them compatible with nearly all modern web browsers, regardless of what device you choose to use. What is WebMI 1.0 and how does it work? WebMI 1.0 is what we call the original version of WebMI. It works by taking screens created by the user and translating them into HTML5 compatible web pages. Cscape's traditional graphics objects predate WebMI, and so they have to be converted to web-compatible objects in that process. The resulting web pages are packaged and loaded onto the micro SD drive on your controller. OCS firmware, if enabled by a valid WebMI license, will then serve up those web pages when queried by a HTML5 compatible web browser. The serving up of these web pages is done one by one as requested, meaning there's a pause on every page change. WebMI 2.0 is the new and improved version of that process. One of the key factors that initiated the development of WebMI 2.0 was the introduction of Canvas controllers and Canvas graphics. Canvas graphics are based on a completely different set of modern objects, meaning Canvas graphics objects were created with HTML5 optimizations included. The browser now does more work at the start of runtime, executing faster page transitions, but with a longer one-time initial load. Although Canvas executes WebMI differently, the user process is virtually identical. How will the WebMI transition work? All new installations of WebMI will use WebMI 2.0. This affects series beyond just the Canvas series, including the Micro and Prime series. Existing applications which are updated to the latest firmware versions will transition to WebMI 2.0 automatically. There is no new licensing required, and as long as you are using Cscape 10 Service Pack 1 or later, the transition should be handled automatically. From that point forward, all future screens created using traditional graphics objects will be transformed into HTML5 pages with updated graphics objects. New installations of WebMI for RCC and Legacy XL series controllers will not be possible. But don't worry, existing applications will continue to function using WebMI 1.0. One of the biggest benefits of the transition is the future functionality between WebMI 2.0 and OCS 360. Later in 2026, Horner's cloud service, OCS 360, will support serving up WebMI 2.0 pages from the cloud. This will result in WebMI pages being accessible anywhere without special security hardware or firewall tweaking, and with more scalability as multiple users will be able to connect simultaneously. Here, we have a list of all firmware versions required for each controller series. We won't go through each one specifically, but one thing to be aware of is that regardless of which series you are using, Cscape 10.2 Service Pack 2 or later will be required. And of course, the Canvas series have always supported WebMI 2.0. Now, we are going to answer some frequently asked questions about the WebMI 2.0 transition. How does WebMI 2.0 affect existing screens? For the most part, the changes to existing screens will be very subtle. The biggest changes will come with the recipe object and alarm object. The functionality remains the same, but the look has been upgraded. You may need to do some slight tweaking to the text or images used, but your program's functionality will remain the same. Generally speaking, for all objects, font sizes and font wrapping might also need some tweaking after the conversion. What is required to upgrade controllers to WebMI 2.0? First, update your controller's firmware to a suitable version for this series that supports WebMI 2.0. We've shown suitable versions in a previous slide. Then, ensure you are using Cscape 10.2 Service Pack 2. After that, simply republish the WebMI pages and they will automatically be updated to WebMI 2.0. There is no relicensing required and no re-downloading of your program required either. Can you continue to use WebMI 1.0? Existing WebMI 1.0 installations will continue to work until you update your controller to a version that supports WebMI 2.0. Controllers that lack WebMI 2.0 support, for instance the ORCC and Legacy XL series, will continue to work uninterrupted. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much for listening, and the Q&A session will begin shortly.
Okay. So if you do have any questions on that coming in the meantime, just get in touch with tech support and we will help you out on that. The registration links are up for the upcoming webinars as well, so you can get in for those if they are of interest to you. I don't see anything in on today's one, so I think we can leave it there. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.